Hi, I'm Scott Sharleef. Welcome back to the news from Kazakhstan. Thanksgiving was an unhappy affair for everyone in the country as the recent attack on the freedom of press produced its first victims on Thursday, November 23rd. Just a day earlier, the state prosecutor attempted to shut down some 40 opposition media outlets and other organizations, branding them extremist. This obviously raised major concerns of local and foreign human rights organizations, but so far, Kazakh authorities seem very determined in their plan to silence the remaining independent media in the state for good. The first to go was Голос Республики.
The distribution of independent newspaper Голос Республики has been suspended in Kazakhstan. According to the editorial office, this decree was issued by the Medea Regional Court of Almaty on November 21st, a day before the Public Prosecution Office filed a lawsuit to declare the Alha Party and Khalik Maydani movement extremist. It also petitions for the termination of issuance and distribution of Kazakh newspapers Vzгляд and Respublika, along with blocking several internet resources and foreign mass media such as KplusTV channel and Stan.TV video portal. The first printed publication to come under the ban was the weekly newspaper Голос Республики. The distribution department staff saw the newspapers inside the warehouse and, unlike before, received the documents for the printed output with no problems. That is when the NSC agents took by surprise.
As global community begins to react to the latest and seemingly most serious threat to democracy and freedom of speech in Kazakhstan, more international organizations issue official comments on the matter. One of the first to address the issue was a Paris-based freedom of information watchdog, Reporters Without Borders.
The human rights organization Reporters Without Borders was alarmed by Kazakhstan's prosecutor's office extremist accusations of a number of independent mass media. The organization issued a statement in which they warned the country's authorities of negative consequences of their actions. We urge the court to withdraw the inquiry, which is extremely dangerous for the freedom of information in Kazakhstan. The government, under the pretext of fighting extremism, wants to initiate an unprecedented assault on its critics. The irony is that Kazakhstan was elected as a member of the UN Human Rights Council on November 12. If Kazakh courts ban independent media, we will demand officially to exclude Kazakhstan from the UNHRC.
Kazakhstan was ranked 154th out of 179 countries in the annual Press Freedom Index released by Reporters Without Borders. A dubious accomplishment, especially compared to other CIS states, including Russia, ranked 142nd.
On Thursday, Russian journalists who are interested in the current situation in Kazakhstan discussed the latest news from the General Prosecutor's Office in regard to K+ channel. Elena Kostyuchenko, the reporter for Novaya Gazeta, who covered both the events in Zhanaozen and the trial of Vladimir Kozlov, said the following. I am shocked by today's news, learning about the fact that your TV channels and newspapers may in fact be shut down along with a number of other media sources. This eliminates any remaining doubt about the nature of political regime in your country. This cannot even be called a sovereign democracy. In fact, this is authoritarianism, which turns into a dictatorship. The independent media is a very crucial and necessary institution for the country. These are the eyes, ears, nerves which transmit the pain signals, while the body that no longer feels the pain tends to die quickly. And your General Prosecutor's Office should keep that in mind. People trust and share with the reporters more than they do with law enforcement officers. In fact, they do not trust them at all. The journalists of Kazakhstan managed to gather tons of evidence in regard to Zhanaozen, and I believe your law enforcement agencies might as well be thankful to you.
What warranted the attack against independent media in Kazakhstan? Why the authorities chose the open confrontation, labeling the ordinary activity of opposition newspapers, TV stations and websites extremism? What could be the outcome for the country? Find out from the next report.
The hunt for so-called political extremists started right after the verdict has been passed on politician Vladimir Kozlov, says his wife Aliya Turuzbekova. No sooner did Aktau court reject the appeal from the opposition leader than the prosecutor's offices in Astana and Aktau attacked mass media involved in proceedings.
По идее, весь этот государственный аппарат, который должен был бороться с действительно террористами.
I understood that it was about to happen when the verdict was passed on Vladimir. The government that is supposed to fight real terrorists pressures the peaceful opposition instead. This shows the weakness of the NSC. I think the situation will only get worse. I expect that government representatives will put certain journalists under pressure. They are capable of this.
Гонение персонально каких-то журналистов.
Oil workers Dusimbek Nurov and Nurlibek Nurgaliyev were side by side with Zhanaozen strikers for 7 months on the Zhanaozen square. They became handicapped due to mass disorders and police clashes in December 2011. The lengthy labor conflict was only covered by very few mass media. The oil workers are outraged by the fact that those media sources are now on the blacklist. The only channel that helped us and told the truth was K+. The rest of the channels, as you know, reported that some drunk guys were attacking people. K+ was the only one that showed the truth. The whole situation with courts was exposed to Kazakhstan and to the whole world thanks to K+. K+ is a channel that told the truth about many things. Thanks to K+, the entire country was aware of our desperation during those 7 months. I did not see any provocation or social hatred among the people. There was nothing like this shown on K+. Meanwhile, residents of Zhanaozen, an oil town that affected the lives of independent mass media, have mixed feelings regarding accusations of extremism. On the one hand, at a time of a media blockade, only K+ covered the strike events. On the other hand, criticism of the country's administration undermines the authority of Kazakhstan. Many Zhanaozen residents think that K+ is being blocked in the country for objectively covering the 2011 December events. Earlier, satellite dishes airing K+ channel were removed and replaced with KplusTV satellites that broadcast only state media channels.
Prominent Kazakhstan writer Temirkhan Meditbek also links the state prosecutor's attempt to shut down the remaining opposition media with the last year's tragedy in Zhanaozen. In general, selected representatives of the intellectual elite are cautious about openly choosing sides just yet, although it's quite clear that they are concerned about the development of the situation.
On Thursday, during the Congress of the Turkic literary magazine editors, the representatives of Kazakhstan clerisy spoke about the threat of closing down the opposition editorial offices. Head of the Writers' Union, Nurlan Orazalin, admitted to be unaware of the Prosecutor General's office legal actions, but just in case chose to link this to the fear of the authorities to lose control over the masses. Whatever is happening to old Europe already took place in the Arab world earlier. Should our little 16 million state go through anything like this, I am afraid we might drown in deep unrest. Therefore, we must do anything it takes to prevent this. It could be a bit tough at times as long as it is fair. Soviet literature and periodicals have long been subjected to censorship, says the Ural poet Akustab Bakhatgireva. She often watches K+. According to her, the channel tries to present an objective picture of what is happening and is certainly not extremist. K+ shows the bare naked truth. At times it could be a bit excessive on criticizing the government and negative points. On a subconscious level, I wish they would not speak about certain things. No need to hurt Kazakhs who are already traumatized. Whereas Khabar shows everything picture perfect. It gets ridiculous. The writer Temirkhan Meditbek, one of the critics of the regime, believes that everything goes back to Zhanaozen. The authorities retaliate against those who told the truth about the December events. K+ was the first channel to release the disturbing video archives from Zhanaozen. Other portals showed these videos later. Yet the awful truth about those events I have personally learned from this channel. If it was not for K+, we would not know about it. Therefore, the channel deserves some credit after all, whereas accusing the channel of extremism is a bit too much. Minister of Culture and Information Darkhan Munbay, whose opinion on the situation with 40 media sources is extremely interesting to hear, failed to attend the Congress of Editors even though he was on the guest list.
Ironically, Awards.kz, the event aimed to celebrate the best of online achievements in the country, is planned to be held right in the midst of this major crisis for Kazakhstan's freedom of information.
On Thursday, the 10th annual Internet Award by the website award.kz was presented in Almaty. The ceremony itself will take place on November 30th. Its peculiarity is that in addition to the grand prize, this time the best website of the decade will be picked. Internet resources will be evaluated based on 3 criteria: design, interactivity, and functionality. The organizers assure that the competition will be transparent. First of all, the jury will consist of professionals, and secondly, the chairman of the jury is a very prominent figure, and believe me, it was very difficult to persuade them to take part in our competition. In fact, we had to explain what the structure of the contest was. Among last year's nominees were even public figures. For instance, the new Deputy Minister of Education and Science, Murat Abenov, who has published more than 100,000 articles in the Kazakh section of Wikipedia. In addition, the former Prime Minister Karim Masimov was awarded for being the best blogger in 2010. We did not put any restrictions on participating sites for a reason, except the ones that go against the constitutional articles and call for the violent overthrow of the regime and so on. The sites that were restricted by Kazakhstan laws are not allowed in the competition, and for us it does not matter whether they're opposition or not. The request to comment on the news that the 24 independent web portals facing closure because of allegations of extremism sounded as a discordant note amid talks about stable development of Kazakhstan internet space. Web publisher Alexander Lyakov, for instance, is not rushing to jump to conclusions and hopes the court will clarify whether they are guilty or not. However, his colleague is willing to speculate on the safe topic, the blockage of well-known resource. I agree that certain sites are really extremist and they need to be banned, and they're actually included in that list. But on the other hand, there is one thing that bothers me a lot about these bans. Why live journal and live internet are closed for us, although they're non-extremist and there are well-recognized blogs on them. It would be nice if the state closed not specific websites, but specific blogs of individuals. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan's Independent Association of Broadcasters awaits a response to its request from the authorities. The main question of journalists, how a forensic examination by the prosecutor's office was conducted, based on which it wants to close independent online newspapers, television stations, and a number of other newspapers.
As usual, the population of the country is slow to react to the latest escapades of the authorities, except for individual public activists who are always ready to express their opinion without fears of potential persecution.
"You cannot kill freedom of speech" was an eloquent sign on the homemade poster with which Murat Kamzin came to protest in front of the building of the supervising authority in Semey. The civil activist is concerned with a statement of General Prosecutor's Office which demanded the ban of the opposition media. I am on a one-man picket to express my opinion on the current situation in Kazakhstan. The authorities now intend to continue suppressing the media and dissenting views following the conviction of Vladimir Kozlov, a person who defends the interest of common people, is backed by thousands and hundred thousands of Kazakhstan citizens.
And speaking of Vladimir Kozlov, his opposition party is fully behind its recently imprisoned leader, while their lawyer is trying to find loopholes in Kazakhstan's legislation and legal procedures, which would allow him to continue fighting for Kozlov's freedom as well as media independence.
Despite pending its own registration, the Alga party started a committee on political prisoners' protection. At yesterday's press conference, the activists claimed they intended to seek political detainee status for Vladimir Kozlov. The documents required for registration have already been submitted to the Ministry of Justice. Releasing Vladimir Kozlov and other political prisoners of Kazakhstan will be our primary field of concern. Along with the prevalence of so-called political outcasts forced to leave the country, there is an ever-growing number of state prisoners. Social activists do not seem surprised by the total independent mass media cleanup following the arrest of Alga party leader Vladimir Kozlov. The well-known Nazarbayev's advisor Yermuhamed Irtizbayev has made it a habit to use the words opposition and extremism in conjunction. Vladimir Kozlov was trying to warn us that the current regime tends to exterminate political opposition as such, just like it happened back in Soviet times. The lawyer Sergei Utkin spent 2 days trying to find the legal action of public prosecution charging several mass media companies of political extremism. During the trial, the public prosecution office will have to provide evidence of the extremist nature information disseminated by the accused mass media. For example, they will need to specify the exact name, date, and time for the file in question, followed by a quoted extremist content. Sergei Utkin refers to legal procedures fixed in the law for editorial claims examination. However, the recent trial on the politician of Kozlov's case was a clear demonstration of the procedure's flexibility.
The imminent closure of several opposition outlets and the threat to independent media in Kazakhstan was fueled on Tuesday by the police raid on the offices of Gulzhan.org website run by an outspoken opposition figure, Gulzhan Yergalieva. Officially, she is to pay damage compensation ordered by court, although most of her supporters believe the prosecution is likely aimed to draw away the attention from her coverage of Vladislav Chelok's case.
During the press conference in Astana, the Anti-Corruption People's Committee representatives expressed readiness to hold a picket in support of the journalist Gulzhan Yergalieva. On Tuesday, the Gulzhan.org website administrator was subjected to an attempt to compulsive delivery to the Administrative Court of Almaty. The fact is that the internet media source lost a court action to the spouse of the former financial policy head, Saltanat Akhanova. The court enforced claiming $30,000 from Gulzhan.org in favor of Saltanat Akhanova for publishing compromising materials. On top of that, Yergalieva must issue a retraction. The website editor is ready to pay the penalty charge. However, she does not intend to apologize. The Anti-Corruption Committee representatives supporting Yergalieva are convinced that the law enforcement authorities intentionally revived legal proceedings against Gulzhan.org to distract public attention from other websites' journalist investigations, such as Vladislav Chelok's case. We believe this to be a heavy fault of the court officials, demonstrating an obvious intention to imprison Gulzhan Yergalieva that is clearly linked to her professional activity.
In the meantime, it seems that the trial of Vladislav Chelok, a bodyguard charged with the mass murder of 15 fellow soldiers, has reached a turning point. Following the examination of incriminating video evidence, the injured party now also doubts Chelok's innocence.
Your Honor, I would like to make a statement in the presence of my son. Why do you keep silencing me? I want to make a public statement. I order a recess. All rise. An attempt by Vladislav Chelykh's mother to make a public statement resulted in her temporary expulsion from the courtroom. The judiciary explained that Svetlana Vashchenko can now address the court only in written form. If you do not obey the presiding judge, he has the right to remove you from court. Are you afraid of my son? If the case is transparent, why are you silencing us? I am asking the court officers to remove the attendant from the courtroom. Do not touch me. The mother of the border guard, charged with the murder of 15 people at the Arkan outpost, demands independent examination of the audio and video investigation recordings. The woman also seeks recalling of Vladislav Chelykh to the courtroom for an opportunity to talk to him and witness of the families of the deceased. I was shooting at beds like this. It was easy to do in a tiny sleeping room. Then I reloaded the gun and went out to the corridor. I noticed Kireev and killed him. After that, I started shooting the contract soldiers. The rest of the border guards were dead by that time. Vladislav's grandfather, Vladimir Chelykh, considers these recordings a well-framed provocation. He is convinced that his grandson's confessions were secured under the investigators' compulsion, allegedly involving psychotropic substances or even a double. My grandson is right-handed, while the guy in the video primarily uses his left hand. So you believe it's a double? Yes, I am sure it's a double. They involved him for false confessions. The presented incriminating evidence influenced the majority opinion. Most of the victims' families are not on Chelykh's side, while the rest are not ready to come up with conclusions, thus leaving justice to the court. Meanwhile, the only outpost massacre survivor never made it to the courtroom despite being transported from the detention facility that morning.
Following several mass murders and bombings in the last few months, it is obvious that terrorism threat is quite high in Kazakhstan. 150 arrests and 112 cases, all related to extremism, might be just statistics for the prosecution office, but it shows a worrying trend to the rest of the population.
According to the Deputy Attorney General Johann Merkel, Kazakhstan Secret Services prevented 24 terrorist attacks this year alone. According to him, a steady trend towards religious radicalizations has been witnessed in Kazakhstan. The official believes influence of international extremists is growing as they recruit young people in Kazakhstan mainly from low-income families which lack knowledge in the field of religion. Additionally, nearly 150 people were convicted for their involvement in terrorist crimes. Financial sources of these groups still remain a big question. The intelligence agencies are now looking into almost 200 organizations that could be involved in financing terrorism. It does not mean that we will include anyone we want into the list. Of course it will not happen that way. The list will be drawn up by the prosecutor's office on the basis of very, very reliable information from law enforcement and special services.
Speaking of terrorism, Jeanette Klodze, the deputy head of the OSCE Center in Astana, said on behalf of the organization that she doesn't believe media outlets attacked recently by the state prosecutor can actually promote extremism in the country.
Government officials, along with representatives of political parties, NGOs, and international organizations, were discussing aspects preventing women from active involvement in politics. However, that was not the only subject of debates for the roundtable. The deputy head of Astana OSCE Center, Jeanette Klodze, commented on the public prosecution lawsuit against the opposition mass media by expressing support for the prosecuted editorial bodies. It is very important for mass media to cover various events and public opinions. OSCE is opposed to all kinds of extremist propaganda. However, extremism is not some kind of a blurred concept. It is something that can be clearly identified by facts and strict definitions. Thus, we find accusations against the prosecuted mass media of political extremism to be far from tenable.
The city of Karaganda hosted the third investment forum on Thursday. The high attendance, however, failed to yield anticipated contracts and other benefits for the country's entrepreneurs. At the same time, international experts say this is quite normal, as the key goal of all similar events is networking, which tends to bring best results in the long run.
Karaganda businessmen attended the investment forum in their own city. 500 other participants from the regions of the country and foreign investors observed protocol activities as well. According to officials, this is the third budget-funded forum thanks to the businessmen. Not much, it is basically sponsors, approximately $500,000. While the investors were wondering where to put their money, local middle and lower middle class were complaining on the side. People were hoping that foreigners will show interest and help them to expand their business and increase jobs and moreover raise local welfare of Karaganda. However, the small and medium businessmen remained an outsider to the celebration of great opportunities. They received a simple invitation, yet they were not offered to present their products.
У меня большие претензии в этом смысле к управлению предпринимательства и промышленности.
I have big issues towards the Department of Business and Industry. Why do organizers of this forum in Karaganda, with its own powerful consulting system, invite companies from Shymkent, Almaty, or anywhere else? I get a feeling that we downgrade our own capacities. Russian economic analyst Igor Vitil explains that any forum is simply an attempt to explore a potential business partner. I regularly visit various conferences. They all run the same way. Everything is well organized in Kazakhstan as usual, and whatever is happening on stage is only formalism of some sort. The forum resulted in 20 signed memoranda for a total amount of $2.19 billion. Again, the energy supply and industrial giants of the country attracted the foreign investors, yet Karaganda's small and medium businesses are inclined to develop on their own.
It seems that the infamous Moscow slavery case will never go away at this point, since new details are revealed almost every day by all parties involved. A few weeks ago, 2 migrants from Kazakhstan claimed that for 10 years they've been held in captivity in a Moscow supermarket, along with 14 other people, including children. The store owners now say that the entire case was a setup, while civic activists plan to address Russian President Vladimir Putin to resolve the current legal deadlock.
Spouses Jansulu Stambekova and Saken Muzdabayev, store owners notorious for a sensational case of Moscow slaves, threw a spotlight on recent scandal. The businessmen brought happy employees along with them for an interview. Among them is Aliya Musabayeva. Her sister has been searching her for 3 years. Aliya refused to communicate with her sister Fatima, who managed to escape from the Moscow store 2 years ago. She did not explain anything. Other employees used the learned by heart phrases to tell what a good life they're living and how well the employers treat them. The conditions were good. We ate there as there was food in the store. I worked well there. A lot of my compatriots can prove my words. They worked here and they went back to Uzbekistan. The spouses believe that the scandal around their business and their employees is caused by intrigues of workers from Uzbekistan and Russian public activists. They were taken by force. You can see this on camera. Doskul does not want to be a part of it, but she was forced into the car and talked into it. They said, let's set them up. They have several stores and apartments. We will each get from $100,000 to $200,000. Layla worked for us as a forwarding agent with her husband. Every day in the morning, they went to Pokrovsky vegetable market. The people there can prove that she was by herself. She always had a passport and money with her. She could leave anytime she wanted. Yesterday, Moscow's prosecutor's office ruled legal the refusal to institute a criminal case on slavery in one of the Moscow stores. Meanwhile, public activists from south of Kazakhstan, together with Russian civil activists, are preparing an address to Vladimir Putin. They intend to ask the president of the neighboring country to clarify the scandal and punish those responsible.
This is all we have time for now. Join us tomorrow for more. Thank you for watching. Stay well.